With just a few weeks before the midterms, a key voting bloc has been reignited. In Dearborn, Michigan, parents are protesting what they say are the school district's woke policies. Correspondent Sarah Williamson has the latest. Sarah?
Good evening, Greta. That's right. These parents in Dearborn, Michigan, have just had enough of this new education system that allows for children to be exposed to what they're calling sexually explicit books. Now, this battle with the school board has been going on for around a year now, with more than 800 people showing up at their last rally. These parents saying that they have been left in the dark and deserve to know what their children are being taught.
These are our children. We have a right to know what's going on, and we have a right to, have a say in what goes on in our schools and in our libraries and what's being taught, especially when you're dealing with indecency and sexually explicit things.
Now, Rola Saleh is one of the mothers denouncing the books and educational materials, saying the problem is that the left are not allowing people to have a different opinion to the ones that they believe in.
This particular issue did bring in people from the Christian and the Muslim faith together, and they found a common ground that unified them in a culture where the left tries everything in their power to they talk so much about diversity, but when it comes to differing opinions, they don't accept it.
And Dearborn's Democratic Mayor Abdullah Hammoud has rejected the people's plea, taking to Twitter saying this: "It's my responsibility to ensure our children have the tools to create their own future," adding that no book will be removed from the shelves. I also reached out to the mayor myself and the mayor's office for comment, but received no response. And another issue the Dearborn parents are facing is that they say the media is framing this story, this issue here, as an attack against the LGBTQ community.
This is definitely not an LGBT issue. This is a decency issue. This is a issue of leading kids into we're in a culture now where we have child pornography and child sex trafficking and anything that can exploit the children. We don't want any part of it. And I feel like these books, these sex manuals, if you will, are what they're doing at the end of the day is they're exploiting kids.
And this battle is still going on for these parents in this area. But I just wanted to say on that note, Greta, that I actually saw an example of one of those books that was on the shelves there. And I can tell you that it is certainly not what was being taught when I was at school and when I was a child.
Thank you, Sarah Williamson. And in Southern California, how would you respond if your child's school district board sent an invitation to a Halloween drag show? Well, that is what the Ensenadas Union School District did. This invitation was sent out to students' families, including activities like a family-friendly drag show. This left some parents unhappy. Here's what one parent had to say.
I just want to know what it is that makes a drag show family-friendly. Because if you follow it to its logical conclusion, you can slap family-friendly titles on anything. You can have family-friendly gentlemen's clubs, family-friendly strip shows, family-friendly 50 Shades of Grey read-alouds. Will you approve my flyer if I want to host an all the sex secrets of the Kama Sutra for kids and families if it's family-friendly? That's my question.
Wow. Come on.
What is it about a grown man, and I honestly, sincerely, as a woman, mean this, what is it about a grown man costumed in a sparkly bra with augmented boobs busting out, a leather miniskirt barely covering his twerking with tuck tape on his front while spreading his fish-netted legs as he writhes on the ground, grinding his groin next to a minor, family-friendly? You owe us an answer.
No.
And you don't get to hide by just taking something down off Peachtree and calling it a day. You owe an explanation and an apology to every parent. You all got caught with your sparkly panties down. And while we have a culture that has a massive problem with child porn, with sex trafficking, you, a little school district board of adults, made the decision to feature an event to hypersexualize young children. Do you want to know that the word that defines that? It's groomer. You all played the activist pimp for an Align Surgical Center, and for a 21+ gay bar. It makes you groomers and activist pimps, and we won't have those sitting on a school board who oversees the education of our children. You all stepped out of line. You should be ashamed. There is nothing loving. There is nothing, let's unite and include, because the logical conclusion of that is you end up in diabolical evil. There are boundaries, and you don't slap family-friendly titles on stuff to cover your.
Hey guys, it's Rob Carson. With inflation at its highest level in 40 years and interest rates skyrocketing, your retirement plans are in danger. Well, our friends at American Hartford Gold can help show you how to protect your savings and retirement accounts by diversifying your portfolio with physical gold and silver. Yeah. If you call them right now, they have a special offer. They will give you a free gold coin on your first qualifying order. So don't wait. Call now. Here's the number. 866-935-4309. That's 866-935-4309, or text Newsmax to 65532. That's Newsmax to 65532.
Senior Lecturer of African American Studies at the University of Maryland, College Park, Jason Nichols joins me. Jason, we're going into this midterm election, and Democrats have typically had, at least in the last election round, is that President Trump apparently lost a lot of suburban women. Now you see all these mothers, not all these, but we see two instances of extreme passion, or maybe it's rightful passion, but what do the Democratic Party, what do they say to them to keep them inside the tent?
Well, I think they stress some of the issues that they care about, particularly things like health care. Of course, they talk about abortion rights. These are things that I think a lot of suburban women are interested in. Of course, education is an issue, and I think there's a way to address that. Of course, I think there should be transparency about what is on the curriculum. I think students should be able to opt out. I remember, going to school and then kids who were Jehovah's Witnesses did not take part in birthday parties or things like that, and they got an opportunity to opt out, and they got another activity. I think that should be on the table for a lot of these school districts as well.
I think, though, there's a little bit more to it than that. And first of all, I don't know any mother or father when you put the kid's going to top inflation or jobs or anything else. I think that's one of the biggest problems that the Democratic Party faces right now, is that the school boards have gotten very active and more conservative active. I don't know if it was COVID because mothers and fathers were seeing more of what's being taught in the schools, or whether what it is. But I think that issue of being a parent will trump, not to use a different word, that's a bad word, will take precedent over everything else. And you see this going on in these schools, these parents that they're rising up.
Yeah, no, I think it is an issue that needs to be discussed. I think one of the questions I have, of course, for any parent, and I'm a parent myself, is where's the line?
How about a drag party? Would that be something you'd want at your kid's school, a drag party?
Of course not. I would have some objections to that, but there are people out there who want to get rid of the book Beloved, or the book by Toni Morrison, or they want to get book Romeo and Juliet, or To Kill a Mockingbird, that all have sexual content in them.
Is there more, though, that some of the parents, at least listening to these parents, it's almost like, I get a sense watching these, and these are two instances, is that they feel like those decisions are being made by others for their children. I mean, I don't know whether they want their children to read those books or not, or what appropriate age, but I think that the objection is that things are being pushed on them.
I understand that, and what I would say is that's what the electoral process is about. That's why you vote for school board members. I think a lot of people just check names. You need to know who's on the school board, what it is they stand for, and not only that, you can recall school board members and actually vote the ones that you believe in, or you can run yourself.
But I think that my point is that it has sort of percolated to the top, this issue, in much more than prior election cycles, that this issue. And so what is the Democratic Party? The Democratic Party is wearing a big sign on it saying woke. And there are a lot of parents. I mean, these are examples of people who just don't like it. And these are the suburban women who did not vote for Donald Trump 2 years ago.
Right.
And so now you want your party to win in November. what are you going to do?
Well,
you think you'll get more people out who are pro-woke to balance the ones you lose?
I think there's, of course, turnout is a big issue. I think also it's about messaging. It's about messaging to these people. First of all, school board elections are nonpartisan. You don't have a Republican school board or
but this
Democratic.
is pinned on the Democratic Party. This is. I mean, you don't see the conservative party doing this, or the Republican Party.
Absolutely, and they've done a really good job with these culture wars. I have to say, the Republicans have done really well with it. But what has to happen is that Democrats have to out-message them about some of these issues that I mentioned before, to make sure that people who are women and people of color, and of course, even the Muslim community, that they stay within the Democratic tent.
But now you see that, at least from that one woman, the Muslims and the Christians are cozying up to each other to fight whatever they object to some books. Those are voting losses for the Democratic Party.
Islam
at least these women.
is a conservative religion, just like black, African American voters are traditionally conservative. Democrats in the past have known how to message to those people, despite the fact that they have conservative values. I think there are a lot of Democrats who have conservative values but believe in a woman's right to choose, or believe in some of the other issues, and are able to recruit those people.
I think you're right, but I think children is the one. I think that's issue number one for everybody. Everyone, those other issues they care about, but don't do anything to my kid. Anyway, who knows?
Don't do anything to mine.
Don't do anything to Jason. So anyway, Jason, thank you. Jason Nichols.
Thank you.